Please be advised this show describes emotionally intense memories from the guests. Listener discretion is advised, and you can check the show notes for more information about this episode's specific content warning.
Welcome to Season 2 of the WhyMe with Vera-Lee podcast series, proudly brought to you by Vera-Lee Designs. Today's guest is Adam Bloom, host of True Blue History podcast, where he explores the stories of Australia's war history, including interviewing past and current military personnel, such as David Trist, who at 95 is a World War II veteran who enlisted in the Australian Army to fight for our country's freedom. Adam's interest in Australia's military history is greatly influenced through many of his family members having served for our country. Adam himself is a deputy captain in the RFS and currently studying to be a professional military historian. As he spends time reflecting on Australia's war efforts and challenges through the lens of those who have the lived-in experience, he is here today to reflect on his own battles and challenges in his life. Diagnosed with ADHD at 6 years old and with learning difficulties and also being an overweight kid, he felt under fire time and time again from serious levels of bullying behaviour. The onslaught of heat he faced daily was making Adam a very unhappy person. He has learned how to fight fire with action, literally as a firefighter and metaphorically in his approach to his mindset, his weight issues, and his purpose in life. Welcome to the WhyMe podcast, Adam.
Thank you, Vera. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Now, we ask all the big questions here first at the WhyMe podcast, such as, what is something you have on your bucket list?
I'd like to walk to get to the summit of Machu Picchu in South America. So that's on the bucket list.
Very, very cool. And may I ask, why Machu Picchu?
I'm really intrigued by the ancient culture and how they lived, and just seeing a different side of how other cultures lived during different times and how we live now and how they live. And it's very different to the way we live. And I feel that every time that we travel, we grow as a person through the experience of travel, through all walks of life. Traveling is the best thing that I recommend to anyone to do. The experiences through your travel, it is unbelievable.
Do you know, one afternoon when everybody had gone home from Camera Club, I wandered down into the dark room and there was this guy that I'd never met before. And he was teaching me about, because I was curious, I sort of poked my head in and said, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he was teaching me how to do his own developing of his photographs. And I was looking at the photographs he was developing, and they were from Machu Picchu. And he was telling me, now he's one of these guys that was a real bloke's bloke, you know, one of those guys that doesn't show his feelings and, you know, really rough sort of on the outside guy. Heart as big as you can imagine. And he was telling me about his experience going there and how it changed him forever. And he goes back regularly now. So it's a very spiritual place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sounds like an amazing place to go. Maybe one day.
Absolutely. Yeah, when we can travel again. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Now, is there a book that's had a profound impact on your life?
It's Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and it's been a phenomenal book for me because if you think and you grow, you can become rich. You can have everything you ever dream and want. And there's secrets in that book. There's all about desire, belief, dreaming. It's such a powerful book to read. And yes. I really think that it should be a book that's given to kids in school, because when he wrote that book all those years ago, it's something that's not taught to kids today. I really believe that if you've got a dream, you should go for it. No matter what, you should be able to go and chase your dreams, and don't let the naysayers say you can't do it. If I did that, I wouldn't be the person I am today. I've learned from those experiences of saying, you can't do that, or being laughed at. It's through those experiences and this book has totally changed my life and the way that I now see my life and where I'm going with my life. I now have a purpose. My friend, Margaret Strike, she got me onto that book, and it's totally changed my life.
Thanks, Margaret. Fantastic. Fantastic recommendation.
Absolutely.
It is a book that's come up a number of times in this podcast when I've asked guests to share one of their favourite books or a book that has had a very strong influence on them on their life. I haven't yet read it. I've read parts of it, but I haven't read it in full, and it is on my list. And I am frantically creating a list and trying to make room in my schedule to sit down and make myself read for, at least an hour a day, because I feel that that's one part of myself that I've lost touch with, in that I love reading and I love soaking up all of this wonderful knowledge authors have that they put in these books for us to enjoy. And there is so much good to come from so many books. And this is really a classic from what I've heard from a lot of people.
Absolutely. And for me, and I'll say it to your listeners, Vera, for me, reading's not a strong point. It's to do with a disability that I've got. And for me to actually read, it's very hard. So for me to read that book, if you really desire something and you want to get better at something, I agree with you. Reading every day for an hour, it is not just the knowledge you gain from reading a book. It's the skills. You get better every day you read. You get better and better. So that's what I'd say. Absolutely. I think it's a key point that you touch on with reading. Is it's good for the mind, it's good for the body, and I know it's the old cliche, it's good for the soul. So
it absolutely is. And these days too, you have options such as Audible, for example, where you can get audiobooks. And so if reading is not your strong point, and for some people they can read, it's the processing part, or for, there's lots of different reasons that people struggle with reading. And so being able to consume this material in other ways, I think is fantastic these days, that we have these options available to us. And it's interesting that as you are a podcaster like myself, I know that I have done a huge shift to consuming a lot of my books and a lot of my material and a lot of my personal development to podcasts, to audiobooks, to these ways that I can consume the material while I'm doing other things. And yet I have recognized the last couple of months that I want to set aside that time to physically sit down with a book and read, because for me, there's something of a different level when I really do prioritize that skill, when I prioritize that activity, and when I prioritize really focusing on the information that I'm getting. And I know for me, I'm very much a writing physically to imprint in my memory, and I think the same for me, turning the pages of a book. Oh, it's a wonderful thing.
I think what it is too, Vera, it's like I had a chance over Christmas to really have a getaway, have a break, and I actually read 2 books, which for me, I haven't done that ever. Like, I really haven't, because reading was so hard for me.
Wow.
I never did that, but now I make sure that it's not that I force myself to do it. It's I actually want to read now, and I want to get better. And my dad, he is a speed reader. He can read 300 pages, and he knows in like 3 or 4 hours. He's just amazing. He's the quickest reader I've ever seen, and it frustrates me because I'm reading military books, and it'll take me the weeks to do a book, and for him, he just goes, "Oh yeah, I've done that book. Yeah, that's done." And I just sit there and go, "Oh, you are frustrated," and he can recite it too. He knows it. He's got a very a good mind in that sense, where he can retain the information but read a book, and if he gets into a topic, he won't put a book down. And like literally we bought him all these books and over Christmas, and by New Year's Eve he'd finished them all, and it was like yeah, right. So getting your personal sitting down for an hour, it's a fantastic thing to do, and I'm really glad that I've decided to start reading again.
I'm really glad you have too. And I'm also glad you brought up the fact that you believe this is the sort of book that should be taught in schools. And I would wonder, and if anyone out here listening is involved in, what gets chosen for the English curriculum, for example, for our Australian schools, I would love to know how those books are chosen. Watching my son go through school, was a very different experience to what I remember about going through school. I was someone who lapped up and loved English. I loved reading so much, and every single type of genre, from Shakespeare to, kids' books to fantasy to whatever. I was into it. I was reading it. In fact, as a kid playing tennis around Australia, every tennis court that I went to, a book was accompanying me. And I do wonder, because I know that my son loves reading, and I know that he's actually quite good at reading. And yet he struggled so much with English at school because the focus on Shakespearean language, a focus on all these other things that either just didn't interest him, they weren't topics that he was interested in, or they were written in language that he really just didn't get. It created this huge gulf in not only his comprehension of what was going on in the classroom around those books and those topics, it also created a gulf for himself where suddenly he was like, well, why all of a sudden is this all so hard for me, And it made him really question why he was reading these books at all, apart from just trying to get a pass in English, which of course is a mandatory subject. So it was really interesting when he had the opportunity to write in his own style. He'd come up with the most amazing essays, So it was obvious that he had skills there. They just weren't the skills represented in the choice of the books that are part of the curriculum. So I really do wonder, with a lot of kids who are going through school, and perhaps you can answer this as somebody who has struggled with reading and now you're finding you are enjoying it. Do you think that if the subject matter was towards things that these kids could say, hey, I could actually use this in my life, like these are skills that I could put to good use. This is something that could help me in my career. This is something that could help me in life to understand myself, or at least to understand why or how people are in the world around me, in the workplace, for example. Do you think that if the subject matter really was more geared towards what these kids were interested in, that would make a difference to the kids that are finding it harder to read?
I do, actually, because look, and I'm not taking anything away from teachers, but
no.
I feel the education system for the likes of people like myself who had ADD with learning difficulties and struggled right through school. A lot of teachers didn't really know how to handle a student like myself because I didn't get it and I needed more help. They would tend to, they do their best, but they would more go towards the students who they just knew would get it, and they would more go towards them. So for me, it was a challenge because I felt so alone and so isolated from the rest of the class, and kids can be very brutal and kids can be cruel, and I felt for me that I was so isolated and so alone, and I wouldn't, if I knew an answer to something, I wouldn't put my hand up in class because I was so afraid that if I got just a little bit of the answer wrong, kids would laugh at me, and that's what they'd done right through school. So for me, it was really hard to feel that teachers had my back, per se, I would say, and really I feel yes, that if kids today if they were given topics that they really enjoyed, I think they'd get a lot more out of school, and I feel that what teachers should be doing is saying, well, they should be asking kids, well, what do you believe your grade? What do you believe that you can achieve? What grade do you think you can achieve? And if they can achieve that, if they say, oh well, I think I can get a B, or I can get a C or an A or whatever. Well, that's what the teachers should be pushing them towards. When I was at school, my grading was always was F's and E's. So I got that. So when I took the school report home, and I'd go, oh my God, Mum's going to look at the lettering and see that I'm not trying. My mum she was a fantastic support. She didn't care about the grade. She cared about the comments of what the teachers said. And I feel today that if they had a chance to to actually say, well, I think I deserve this grade and work towards it. And going back to what you said, if kids were interested in topics that they actually wanted to do and life skills that could help them, it's funny, certain things click with me that I think kids are very the same. They click in other ways. Like your son, he clicked in a different way when he found a topic that he was passionate about and interested in. And that's the same for me with military history. I was told that I couldn't do military history, or I couldn't do modern history at school. Now it's funny that some of the teachers who told me that I couldn't do military history they're amazed at how far I've come. And now that I'm talking to leading historians from Australia, Britain, all over France, all over the world, and they're amazed at what I've been able to achieve and if I had to listen to them and the naysayers to say that I couldn't do something, I probably believe, and for a long time I did believe it. It's only in the last sort of 2 years where I had that why me moment and that I've really turned my life around.
Wow. And we will come back to that why me moment very soon. I think there's a few things you touched on there, and I know that schooling has changed and yet certain things are still the same. And I don't know that there are really any answers per se. I think that, you touched on a bit of accountability here. And yeah, if the kids are interested in the topic, or if they can see what there is in it for them more than just a pass grade, then they're more likely to put in that effort. But like you said, think and grow rich. It made sense to you, and it's given you a lot of information that, you are now using every single day. And so I suppose that if its usability is seen by each person, then that's what can propel you forward to overcome some of those obstacles that you're getting through. And here you are, basically with your head in books all the time with military history. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think too, Vera, what it is, like kids today taught goal setting. Setting a goal is the biggest thing that I've learned. I always did set little goals, but setting goals that absolutely scare you and you don't know how to achieve them, but that's not the point. You set a goal and you make it that is where you want to go. I think that goal setting should be part of the curriculum for kids because they need to know that goal setting is so important in life. If you don't set goals, what is the purpose going after and chasing your dreams? Because people want to be dream chasers, and it's always great to dream. The best people in the world, the athletes, the greatest athletes, they always aspired to be the greatest in their field, and they through hard work. And there's a quote that Napoleon Hill says that if you think you're going to be rich by just working hard, that alone is not going to make you rich. So you have to be willing to work hard, but you also have to become sort of an expert in your chosen field. So that's a big message I take away from Think and Grow Rich.
Absolutely. And one of the first things that we fall back on in any workplace is goal setting. From the really, really small, look at project management, the really, really small parts and all of your key milestones along the way to achieving that bigger goal. Because as we know, you can't get up a flight of stairs going from the bottom rung right to the top. You have to do the yards, you have to put in the effort, you've got to take every step along the way. Sharing is caring, and I care. I care about you. I care about your journey into learning who you really are at your core. And I care about my guests and sharing and honouring each of their stories, their unique presence in this world, and embracing who each of us are. You can follow me on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, at Vera-Lee Original, and on the new WhyMeMovement.com website, where you can book a call with me to discuss where you would like help and support in your journey and to determine which of my experiences can best suit your needs. I now offer the Embrace one-to-one mentoring to help you gain clarity of purpose, learn the skills to live a more fulfilling life, and to feel more inspired, connected, and empowered to create positive change aligned with your personal aspirations. There's a whole lot more on the website. I would love for you to go and check it out, WhyMeMovement.com. Do the yards, you have to put in the effort. You've got to take every step along the way and experience that and learn all the skills along the way.
Absolutely. And I feel too that the biggest thing that I've learned in the last 10 years in the workforce is I look back at where I was when I was 19 when I went into the workforce to now 10 years on, and I had an experience a couple of days ago actually, and it was a young 20-year-old just fresh into the industry, has become an engineer, and is like he's very new, and you can tell that he hasn't had any life experience, and he's very much bossing you around, and it just made me think. It made me stop and think, and I looked and I went, yeah, that used to be me actually. And it's funny that it's amazing when you look back to where you were when you were 19 to where you are at 29, and you just see through life experience, through things, see how things change, and I feel that and this may sound controversial, but I'm going to say it. Kids today who come straight out of school expect to be on 120 grand a year and expect to be the boss. And to do that, you've got to work to be the boss. Like that's the biggest thing that I've learned. There's challenges of being a boss to being an employee who just starts. And eventually, if you want to aspire to be a boss, go and be a boss. Like, you need to have the experience and the life experience in order to go and do that.
You do, so that when you have things happen, which they invariably will, and in leadership, there will always be situations that happen, to have had that life experience allows you the perspective and allows you the knowledge and allows you some of the skills to do your best at working through that situation.
Absolutely. And I think what I've learned myself through the fire brigade is that I've become a deputy captain 3 years ago. And so I had a lot of respect as a firefighter. I'd worked my way up the ranks and I found it very challenging. It was almost like I lost the respect once I became a deputy captain, and I struggled with it a lot because I was like, hang on, I'm the same person. I've worked hard with you as a firefighter, but you're not respecting me as a deputy captain in authority. And it, for a while there, it really was, it was hard. And I actually had to take a step back and look at me and look at the message that I was portraying out to my crew, and my captain, who he's in the army, and he pulled me aside and said, listen, he said, yes, you're a good firefighter, but you need to prove to your crew that you can be a leader, and they've got to put faith in you to know that in a life and death situation, they can rely on you to get them out of the life and death situation. And I had to learn that. And for me, that was a huge thing. At 26, that was huge. And I'll admit it, I didn't cope with that very well at first, because I just automatically assumed that because I'd worked with them for the, up until that point being a firefighter, that they'd seen what I'd done, so that when I become a deputy, that it'd just automatically roll over and continue on. But no, it didn't. And I had to take a step back and look at myself to then look at the message that I was putting across. And I feel that if kids do that today and take a step back, sometimes think before they act, I really think that it's a valuable lesson that I've learned in especially the last 3 years.
Kids and adults alike.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Who's been an influential person for you in your life?
My late nana. She was my rock. She was my best friend. She was the one that, and I know some people would probably think that I would say my mum. My mum is a very close second to my nana, but my nana was my best friend. She got me in a way that no one else ever did, and I'm nearly crying talking about her. She passed away 15 or 16 years ago this year, and she was the one that really inspired me to really go and chase my dreams. And I lost my way for a little bit there a few years, but I'll tell that later on in the story. But she was the one that inspired me to really set goals. And because when I used to go down to her place, and as a young kid, and I used to she used to sit with me and talk with me, and we'd do paintings, and we'd do all these sort of things. And she was the one that I used to go to her and say, "Nen, I'm getting made fun of at school. I'm not I'm not smart enough. I'm stupid. I'm this. I'm slow. People are making fun of me." And she said, "Adam, you're not slow. You just don't get it as quick as other people." And she said, "There's nothing wrong with that." And she said, For me, she said, "You're my special boy. You are my special boy, and you will achieve greatness. You were put on this earth to help and inspire, and you will help and inspire others to achieve greatness." And so I know she's with me. She's on my left shoulder every single day. She's with me. I feel her presence. She was just a truly inspirational woman. She had breast cancer herself. She had emphysema. She died of emphysema. The days that I didn't go and spend time with her, I would now give anything to spend more time with her and ask her more questions about her life. She was my inspiration. She really was. And I miss her dearly. I really do. I miss her every day. I think, Vera, she would be proud of the young man that I've become. I really do believe that, and I know my parents are proud of me. I know that everything I do now is it's just trying to make my family and especially my nana proud.
It sounds like she was a very wise woman.
Very much so. Very, with her charity work that she did, she got Premier's Awards for working with cancer with the Cancer Council. She did Meals on Wheels. She was a nurse herself. She had a very hard life, and she was the type of woman that you'd go with a problem and then just had a way to fix it. She'd make you feel safe no matter what the problem was. She always fixed it. Out of all the grandchildren, I gave the eulogy at her funeral, and I felt it was important for me to do that because I had such a special bond with her that none of the other grandkids wanted to speak. And because Nen was such a special lady, I just felt that it was my time to stand up and just say how special my nana was. It was something that I had to do, and it was I know it sounds weird, Vera, but some people say that it's like a calling, like something is calling you to do it. And I really feel that was the first time that my nana spoke to me after she died. And I remember the night she died. My nan was a fighter, and I remember, so I had a big argument with my dad the night before she died, and because I wanted to go and see her, and I said, "Dad, I want you to take me down to see Nana," and he said no, and I got the shits. Really, I was really angry, and I called him every name under the sun. I was so upset, and I got changed, and I started to walk out the house, and I was going to get the train and get down to the hospital. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I knew I was going to get there. He stopped me halfway, and then I went back into my room, and he said, "You're not going." And then so I called him every name under the sun again, and he still doesn't know to this day what it was. And I really think it was my nan calling on Dad to bring me down, because he came in and he said, "I'm going to take you down to the hospital." And I said, "Piss off. I don't want to do anything with you, da, 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 da." And as I said, I look back on it now, and I was horrible to my dad. But at the time, I was so emotional, and I let my emotions take over. And in the end, he took me down, and then I went in and saw my nan, and she squeezed my hand, and I still remember it. She squeezed my hand, and I said, "Nan, I'm here. She squeezed my hand, and she took her oxygen mask off, and she said to my grandfather and the nurse, she said, "I can't do it. It's got me this time. It's beaten me." And my nan never ever said that. Like she was always one that said, "No, I'll beat this. No, I'm going to beat this. I'm going to beat this." And then she squeezed my hand again, and I just remember it as clear as day. She squeezed my hand and she said, "It's got me. This time I can't do it. I can't fight it any." And Pop and the nurse said, "No, you're fine. Like, you know, you'll be right. You'll come out of this." And when she squeezed my hand again for the third time, I knew then that was Nen saying goodbye, and I knew then that it was she, and I walked out knowing that she wasn't going to pull through, and it was the next day at 5 minutes past 3 that she passed away, and I thank Dad every day for taking me down there and saying a proper goodbye, because I never got that opportunity with my other grandparents. I was too young to say goodbye to them, and at that stage I didn't understand death, and I didn't because I was 5 and 4 when they I was 4 and 5 when they died. So I didn't understand what death was then. As when I was 12, I knew for the first time that what death actually meant. So yeah.
It's interesting, actually, when you said that she's still with you and she's on your left shoulder. Before you said that, straight in my mind popped, I think she's still with you. And so when you said that, that didn't surprise me at all. And hearing that story, hearing that connection, you two are very, very connected on a very deep level. And it makes sense to me that she's still with you. And that was, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, Vera, because my mum and Pop don't actually feel that she's with them. It's very strange. Like, it's they don't feel that she is with them. They don't feel a presence as I do, and I have pretty much virtually since the day she died. I've had that she's always with me, and I always know that if things are bad, and obviously later on when we get to the why me moment and we get to when I talk about what I did in 2014, that is where you'll really see where I think she is with me every single day.
I love asking my guests to recap a Why Me episode of their choice. What episode did you choose to bring to the table tonight?
So it was the Why Me moment with Vivian. Vivian, who you had on, was her amazing story was where when she was 15, she was put in an institution for depression, and just her story of where she was in that institution and then where she left, has moved to Australia, never been home. It just, for me, it really hit a core with me, because it's so young to be put in an institution. It's sort of, I never got to that point, but I got close, and it just brought back a lot of memories for me of what I went through as a child, and what I went through as a teenager, and into my early adult life too. I wasn't accustomed to bullying in my early adult life as well. So I think that was the why me. That was the moment that brought me back to where it brought me back from virtually it was like a movie going in my head, from where I was virtually, I'd say, from 6 to, I'd say, 23, 24. That's where, and that was the moment of like, wow, there is other people out there that have gone through similar experiences to what I've gone through. And that was the why me moment.
Without delaying any further, I normally talk a little bit more about the episode that my guest chooses to discuss. However, tonight I feel that we will do that naturally as we come into your story. This is very relatable to what you've gone through. So how about you tell us a little bit about your chosen Why Me moment that you'd like to share with the listeners?
So my why me moment was in 2014. I had been severely depressed. I tried to hide it for a long, long time, and I wasn't doing well at work. I was in a really bad place, and in 2014 I almost tried to commit suicide. So I remember the day. I remember exactly the way I was feeling. I drove up to a cliff, and I stood at the cliff. As I was about to walk off the cliff, I had a moment. It was my nan saying, "Stop, just pick up the phone and make a phone call." That was the moment I rang. He's no longer a friend of mine, but at that time, he was in my life for that reason. I rang him, and he spoke to me for 4 hours and talked me down. He actually talked me down off the edge of that cliff. And Vera, it was a point that I just let everything get on top of me, and I just thought the world would be a better place without me in it at that point in time in my life in 2014. And I was bullied. I felt that no one loved me, and I tried to hide it from my family. And
I love reading your comments and appreciate your support in sharing this podcast with those you feel will also enjoy the content created for you. One of the easiest ways to do this is simply to leave a rating and review. If you would like my support in helping you to find your why, search the hashtag WhyMe Movement, because what follows that question, why me, is the movement. It's up to you to take action, and I am here when you are ready to help you see a different perspective and to choose your own hope and happiness in life.
Tried to hide it from my family, and it was only that after I was talked down, the next day I was booked into the doctors, and I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and severe depression. And I worked with a psychologist for 5 years and worked through techniques and things. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say that it's all been roses in the last 6 years. It hasn't. I still have days that I'm down, as everyone who suffers from depression or PTSD. I still have days where I am down, but what I've learned, and through the techniques that I've learned, and the strategies that I've put in place, I now work off frequencies. And I know it sounds, Vera, I know you get frequencies, you get vibrations, and it's the biggest thing that I've learned from Think and Grow Rich and mentors like Bob Proctor, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Brendan Bouchard. I've learnt that if you've got a goal and a frequency, if you get to a frequency and you're on a frequency, your frequency is here, but you want to get to the frequency up there. And what I've learned now through strategies and listening to my mentors, I class them all as my mentors now. The quickest thing that I've learned is when I am down, is getting back, how quick I can bounce straight back to the frequency that I want to be on, and where everything's in sync, everything's good. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned through my experience and my journey through the last 6 years. And it's been a hard experience, and it's been a lot of hard work too. It's been a lot of hard mental work. I call the mental work, it's like a muscle. The muscle gets weak, and you've got to build it back up. It's something that, it gets weak, but you've got to build that muscle back up. And look, there are times where it does happen. And I had a couple of weeks ago, and I'll share this story. It's a housemate of mine. He was going through a hard time. And he tried to commit suicide, and he actually did it down the road from my place and came home. I had to leave the house because it brought back so many memories for me that I couldn't cope. I couldn't deal with it. And I actually rang another friend of both of ours, and he came down, and I actually got criticised by the other mate for saying, he said I should have called the ambulance. And looking back, yeah, I probably should have, but I couldn't deal with what had happened. Like I just for me it was, and I take away everything that I'm a volunteer firey. I deal with those sort of things all the time. I deal with that sort of thing. But for me to have that in my face again after working so hard over the last 6 years to get away from that person where I was, and to see that like it's in your face when and that's the first time ever I've seen someone do that. It really hit home, and it was hard. It was challenging, and I apologized to the friend, and I said, look, I'm sorry, but I couldn't deal with it. I just had to step away from it. I just couldn't do it. It was just and look, now looking back on it, that experience, now I think it was another learning process that I had to go through, that now if I was faced with it again, I would probably be able to deal with it now. Just at that point, I couldn't deal with it. So yeah, that's sort of where that's the moment for me so it always constantly comes back. I feel that there's ups and downs. Everyone has ups and downs through life. It's how people choose to deal with them. And look, I'm a big believer now, Vera, that that life is worth living. Yeah. Go out and absolutely, like, I don't ever think now of where I was back then. I know through everything that's my life up until this point, I now love life. I am now such an advocate of living a healthy, happy life, and I love it. And life for me, it's funny, some people have said to me, Vera, they go, are you on drugs or what? You've changed so much. Is everything okay? And I said, yeah, I'm on the life drug. Do you want some? Like, go and grab it. If you want life, go and grab it. Like, go out and grab life. And look, I look at it, take the bull by the horns and face your fears. And because at the end of the day, we can let fear define us, or we can define fear. And that's what I look at.
Oh, I've got a couple of juicy questions for you.
Okay.
Listening, there was a lot of talking about ups and downs there, using those words, ups and downs. Overwhelm came in a fair bit too. And as you said, in that 6-year journey, there are lots of ups and downs. There are lots of hard work being put in there. There were times when you didn't feel that you were managing things as well as you might have liked to have. And I think it's important to recognise these journeys of healing are not linear. They are going to have all sorts of events happen that will be thrown in there into our life that will throw us off our course. They will throw us into a state of overwhelm in those moments. And as you said, you've recognised that sometimes those moments are there where we can learn from them. We can take the opportunity to learn from those moments. My first question, I want to take you back to that cliff because I want to ask a few questions about the ups and downs. And I want to come back to something that you explained is on your bucket list of climbing mountains. So climbing mountains, we're going up, and yet you chose a cliff to end it all, which is taking you very, very, very far down. The question that I have to ask for you, in your words, why was it that you needed to be talked down rather than talked up?
That's a very juicy question. And I feel for me, getting talked down was where I look at it that I was at the peak, but I was at the peak of being at the bottom of, and I feel that getting talked away from the edge. I probably used the wrong word there.
I don't think it's about using the wrong word, Adam. I sort of can see and understand why you did, but I wanted to hear it from you. I wanted to know what your perspective was, because you're the person that has lived through this and you're the person that is helping other people now.
I guess to answer your first question, the first part of why I chose a cliff, I chose a cliff because I didn't want to burden anybody else with my suicide attempt. I wanted to go and do it in private, and I didn't want to jump in front of a train. I didn't want to jump off a bridge. I wanted to. The reason I chose a cliff was because it was private. There was no one around, and at that point, I felt that I was totally alone, and that is why I chose a cliff. So for me, that's where I was at with my mental health. I totally felt alone, even though, you know, Vera, yourself, people often say, oh, with depression, oh, it's just attention seeking. It's just attention seeking. That's all it is. And it's not. I wouldn't wish depression on anybody at all. I would, even my worst enemy. I wouldn't wish depression. There's days where you don't want to get out of bed, and you don't want to. There's no purpose. There's no drive. There's nothing. You'd rather stay in bed than get up and face the world. And that to me is it's debilitating. It really is debilitating. And it's, you know, and you try and when you're fighting it, and that was the biggest thing that I was fighting it. Yeah. I tried so hard to put on a brave face, and it's funny that since I came out and told everyone that I attempted, and look, I can now look back 6 years later, and like people go, oh, you tried to attempt suicide, and they're like, oh my God, and for me, I'm okay with it now. I've actually done the work now that I'm okay with talking about my attempted suicide, because it's made me the person I am today. And that is the biggest thing that I have taken away from my attempted on suicide to now where I am today. That's the biggest thing that I've taken away, is the I can now be comfortable to talk about it, because it's a part of me. It's a part of who I am. Why try and bury it? Because if I bury it, it's like I'm ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed of what I did. I'm not ashamed, because it has now set me up, because I want to help people and show people that there is you don't have to go down that path. You do not have to kill yourself, because I look at it this way now, and I've looked at it from 6 years where I was to where I am now. Yeah. I look at it this way. My family, so I was 20, what was I? I was 22 at the time. I was 22 when I tried to get, so my parents, if they live for another 40 years, that's 40 years of pain and suffering that I put onto them. And what sort of a life is that for them? It's not a life. It's nothing. And for me, I've looked at that now, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody that would, you know, because it's not the right way. It's really not. And there are people there. There is help. You can, you know, and the pain and suffering that I would have caused, not just my family, but my friends. And that's the thing that and so getting back to your question, why did I get talked? Why did I feel I had to be talked down? I felt that I was at the point that I was about to let go, and I had to be talked down. It was something that I felt that I had to be talked down from taking that step.
So I'd like to take a moment to express some things I've observed. And the audience won't see this because I'm looking at you on video and they're listening to you. However, a lot of the time when you were talking about being talked down, your shoulders were coming up, you were coming up, you were actually rising up. And so was your voice, so was your energy. And I want to ask you another question, which from what you were just talking about then, you don't want to wish this upon anyone because you know how dark that place is, and I get that. You talked about you wouldn't want to have your parents living their hopefully long lives for 40 years without their son in that terrible pain that you would have caused them. In that moment, though, were you able to think of those things, or were you so consumed with the height of the anxiety and that was where the up was? It was this level of anxiety rising that did you really want to kill yourself, or did you feel like that was the only way out?
I would say it would be what you just said. It was the only way out. If I'm looking back now, that was what it would be. Would be, I felt that it was the only way out at that point of time. I felt that I was in such a bad state of mind, and where I was, I just felt that, yeah, it was the only option. It was the only way out. And like I said to you, my nan was there that day. She saved my life. And that the friend at the time, he also saved my life. So I owe my nan, but I also owe him. And look, he moved on to other things. I don't begrudge him for that. I don't, at that time, people come in and out of your lives. That's how it happens. People come in, people go out all the time. That's just how life is. And I feel that it's at that time I needed him. Now I'm in a totally different headspace. I'm in a totally different mindset. And look, I've lost a lot of friends, Vera. I have in the last 2 years, what I've done with how I've changed, it's been so radical that people are thinking, well, what's going on? And look, some people like the new me, some people don't. But what I've learned from myself is I don't care what people think of me anymore. I really don't. What I care about now is I care about getting a message out to help others. That is what I really feel is that is why I was put on this earth, is to help others and inspire others, and especially young kids too. Inspire young kids who are told, hey, you're not going to achieve anything in life, because that was what I was told by a teacher. A teacher told me, my year 6 teacher told me I would never accomplish my school certificate. I would never accomplish my high school certificate. I got both. So, and a big driving thing for me was I've gone, and I'm a big person of going, well, you know what? If you tell me I can't do something, I'll prove you wrong. I'll go and prove you wrong. Yeah. I'll show you that I'll prove you wrong. And it's just, that's one thing that I've learned, and a lot of people know me, that I'm a determined little bugger. I will, if I set a goal, 98% of the time I achieve it. So that's sort of where I was to where I am now. And that's the big difference. That question, fantastic question, because that is what I was at. I was at that point, and I look back at that person, and I look back to where I was, and if I look back now to where I am right now, I'd reach out and say, hey mate, I'd love to say to that Adam, hey buddy, life gets better. Life, it's not the only way. This is not the only way out. If you just reach out and ask for help, and I'm not ashamed to say, anyone who reaches out, it is not weak to speak. There is so many things that around that if you speak out, you are weak. It is such a stupid stereotype that is placed on speaking out, and I just think it's and you hear it all the time. Like I'm in earth moving, and I hear it all the time. I hear it, blokes don't speak, it's weak to speak, and it's crap. It's a stereotypical crap thing that's in society that, and we've lost too many good people in this world over a stereotypical bloody stupid thing that I just think really we need to break down those barriers and say, hey, it's okay to speak. It's if you're not feeling well in mentally, why shouldn't you be able to go and speak? I really believe that. Why shouldn't you? And Vera, you know it yourself.
Totally.
Why shouldn't you be able to do it?
Totally should. And this is why we have so many professionals in the mental health industry ready to help people, because there is a need for all of us. It's a little bit like thinking of yourself like a machine. And we often call the human body a machine. It needs to be maintained. It needs to be serviced. And we so often can understand bodily, physically, that is important. People can make that clear connection between, if I eat good nutrition for my body, if I give it what it needs to function, if I give it the fuel it needs when it needs it, keep it serviced, it's going to provide this vessel for me to live the best life physically. However, where is the disconnect that our brain, which does every single thing, it's leading, it's creating the signals to keep us breathing, all those autonomous systems of ours that keep us breathing, that keep us thinking, that keep us alive, all those things that we don't have to consciously think to do. Where is the disconnect? I would like to know, why as humans we seem to do this, to not correlate the importance of keeping our brain service, keeping our mental health service, keeping our mind operating at its most optimal capacity. And to do that, we so often need the support of other people's minds, of words, of, getting that different perspective, of having people that are trained to be able to help us through that servicing, really. I mean, looking at it in the most simple form, that's really what we're doing. We need to be exercising and to learn these skills on how to help and manage ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think what you've touched on there, I think you're right, because I think we ourselves, and we're all guilty of it sometimes, are becoming robots. We just become robots that, we go to work, and then you come home, and then you just get up and repeat that, repeat. And I feel that in a sense, why COVID has been such a bad thing to the world, but it's also been a good thing, because I think when we were in lockdown and not being able to see our families, and we took a step back. A lot of us all took a step back, and I know I did, because I looked at what were the priorities in my life, and not being able to do certain things, and especially I spoke to a few war veterans about this, and it's funny because when you saw people fighting over toilet paper and all this sort of thing, I asked a veteran, I said, well, what do you see about this lockdown? And people are going crazy. And he said, it's funny, Adam. He said, I'll say this. He said, now you people who have had your freedoms taken away, you might now see what we fought for. Yeah. The freedom we fought so hard that you enjoyed and have had taken away. Now you'll see what it means, and it sucked, didn't it? And I actually said to him, I said, look, Tony, I've got no answer to that. I can't give you an answer, because what you're saying is totally correct. And I couldn't give him an answer, because I just said, you've hit the nail on the head. And I think COVID, you're right. I think COVID, why it's been so bad, it's also been good in another sense, because families have actually stopped and seen how important it is to really reassess not just the family goals, but people's own life goals and people's priorities. That's the biggest thing, that like family and friends, catching up with like family and friends has been huge for me, and I've reconnected with friends who I hadn't spoke to in 9 years. Wow. and we've had connections now, and we're back to the friend who I talk to now. We hadn't spoke for 9 years, but we we now speak on a weekly basis, and it's fantastic. And it's like we never stopped. The friendship never stopped. And you know, she went through her own sufferings, and she had her own problems, and she went through depression as well, which I had no idea about, and she had no idea that I had depression. So it was crazy, but I really feel that now, like you said, working on your mental health, we need to be working on our mental health every day.
We do. You've touched on something there that I wrote down before we started that conversation just then. And I've written down disconnected with an arrow to most connected. I don't know if you can see that there.
Yeah, I can. Yes.
What I was referring to there, going back to the cliff moment just for a moment, you felt the most disconnected to everything and everybody around you at that moment. And you also felt trapped within your life. You felt trapped of, well, there's nowhere else to go from here. And yet that moment, probably out of any, you were the most connected to your nan in that moment, because she gave you those words. She gave you that message. She gave you that feeling that you matter and don't do this. Wow. And again, COVID has been like this. It's been that disconnection that has created some of the most profound connections for people to have that different perspective again.
It has. And I honestly feel, Vera, and you can see it, and like you can see me, that day, it will never leave my mind. And that day, I honestly, and I'm so grateful to my nan. I'm so grateful for the universe. Everything that's happened to me, I'm grateful now. I can see that on that day, I was lucky enough that I had someone that the connection that you talk about, that was sparked that day again, and it was facing a near death experience that I managed to reconnect and have the strength to be talked away and talked down from that edge, from that cliff, and to know that actually, no, I need help. I want help. I want to live my life. I owe it to my nan, and I owe it to my family who have supported me since then, and I owe it to friends. I owe it to everyone, and that's the why me moment, Vera. That is the, when you say the disconnect and reconnect, that is the why me moment for me. That is the moment for me that I feel that the old me sort of died on that day. The new reincarnation version, yeah, okay, he still had his problems, but now I've been lucky that and as I said, I'll go into it now. I was bullied right through school. I was overweight. I got to 156 kilos, and I was exercising. I was doing the right things, and nothing was changing. And so for me, I went and saw the doctor, and I said, look, I was working with a PT 4 days a week, and we just couldn't shift the weight. Nothing was, like, I was eating right, nothing was working. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shift the weight. And I said to the PT, oh, look, I'm sick of this. I'm working my guts out and I'm getting nowhere. I said, and this was in 2019, and I went to the doctor. I got a referral to a specialist. He did the bloods, and he said, I am so glad you're seeing me, because he said, if you had kept going the way you were going, you would have been dead in 9 years. So at that stage, I would be dead by 34. And I looked at that moment, and I was virtually, it was like a second near-death experience, that I got hit with a ton of bricks. What the hell are you, what have you done? You know, you've had this moment in 2014, you're now 2019, but you're still like, you could die again in 9 years. And that was when I made the decision to have gastric sleeve surgery. And I had that at the end of 2019, and to this date, I've lost 54 kilos. So I am grateful for what, and I'd say it to anyone who is going to have gastric sleeve surgery. The first 5 months after your surgery are the toughest 5 months of your life. I am going to say it. They are the toughest, roughest 5 months that you will ever have. You think, why the hell did I do this? Like, absolute, like not being able to keep food down, not being able to keep water, anything, just straight back up. And like, you virtually have to, when you have the operation, you virtually have to learn to eat again, virtually from like you're a baby, and smaller portions. And I was lucky because the surgeon said to me, he said that that you will some people get depressed if they can't finish a meal what's on their plate. I didn't ever think like that, and I still don't now, because what I do now is I go, okay, if I can't finish it, that's fine, I'll just have it tomorrow. And that's been my mindset straight away from when I started, that, okay, cool. And some people get really depressed and upset that they can't finish a meal. For me, it's not a problem. I feel that because what I went through in 6 years earlier to now, I think that has set me up, and it's been a good builder to the mental health and building the muscles and building the muscle back up. That I feel that was where I now am at a point where, yeah, okay, I still have down days, but as I said to you, I can get back to the frequency where I'm going. So people, what you need to do, people need to realize who they are, where they are right now, and where they're going, and then they need to go for it. They need to absolutely go for it. And now that's what I've done. And like last year, like Vera, I launched my podcast. Like I had no idea how to make a podcast. I had no idea what I was doing. I just jumped straight into the deep end and went, okay, let's go. All right, this is podcasting. Here we go. Had no idea what I was doing. No idea. Never had any interviewing training. Never had journal training. Being a journalist, nothing. I virtually just jumped straight in and went, right, let's go. And I think some people have said to me, what were you thinking? I wasn't thinking, but I think that was part of it, that I had to do that and now the podcast has become my labor of love. It is just my absolute labor of love. It is now, I'm honored and privileged to speak to the likes of you. I'm honored to speak to veterans from the Second World War right through to the modern day. I mean, I am so lucky and so privileged that I get to speak to them and talk about their experiences, and it's confronting. It really is for them. It's very confronting. Some of them have never spoken. I'm the first person they've spoken to, and that in itself, I'm so forever grateful and so honored that they chose to talk to me, and some of the things they don't even share with their family, and I'm the first person. And for me, I often ask all the veterans, why did you choose to come on my show? Why? And they said, Adam, we come on your show because we can see the passion in you. We can see how much it means to you. And they said, you're not just after the quick grab, take it and run. You genuinely care about our story and getting our stories out. And that's what it is. That for me, that's what it's all about. For me, it's I've been to the Western Front 3 times. I've been to Gallipoli once. I've walked those cemeteries, and they're silent cities, and you see on the headstones the personal pain of families that, you know, only son of Mr. and Mrs. Smith of Ballarat and Victoria, and you know it's you see that, you know, died at 26. Well, that was me 3 years ago, and then I look back to and I had a moment when I was in 2015 at Gallipoli, and for me it was I stopped at a grave, and there was a row of graves it was a generation from 15 to 25, and the grave I happened to stop on was the age I was right at that point. So
Wow.
he was 23, and I burst into tears. And my dad came over, and the whole group came over and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not." I'd just gone through the previous year, what happened, to then be at that grave, and I just felt it was the universe telling me that, hey, look at what these men did. They volunteered for a war 12,000 miles away, and this bloke died at 23, and you're that age now. 100 years ago, that could have been you. And, a year before, you had that experience where you wanted to end your life. They'd give anything. They volunteered, and they died on a beach in a foreign land. That you like, have a look at yourself and really look at, well, they gave up, and with them died any chance that they would have had kids, what they would have gone on to achieve in life, what they would have built with their hands. And I feel that was a moment for me that lives with me for the rest of my life. That, be thankful and be grateful for life. It is the most precious thing, and in an instant it can be taken away. So that's the biggest thing that I've learned in myself, and why I am the person I am today, because I have changed. And now, Vera, I'm radiating. I love talking to you about it, because I love wanting to help people.
Yeah.
That is what I feel I was put on this earth to do, is to help people.
Yes, and it was that disconnection that the bullies were creating right at the start that set the tone that had you nearly taking your life. And yet now you have a very different tone, a very different rhythm that you're moving through, and you're connecting with some incredible people. And the last thing from their mind is to be bullying you or judging you or telling you what you should do. They're coming to you and embracing what it is that you do naturally, what you're offering. And I think that when we talk about finding your tribe through your podcast, through not thinking about, well, I need to know all these things to start my podcast, and just jumping in and doing it, taking action, people have recognized that, and your tribe is coming to you. And I love that, because in there is that connection. And without you having the strength to work through knowing who you are and what it is that your purpose is, and that you want to connect and help people, you've now given permission to others to do the same, to connect to you and tell you stories that they've never told anybody before. And that in itself is just huge. I mean, there is so much freedom that you are offering people who may have had some of those things trapped inside their own mind for all those years.
Yeah, and I live by a thing now that whether or not the podcast is a success or not, which it is, it's been an absolute success. You're already a success in your own right, because you had the forward thinking to have a go.
Yeah.
And and you are so far ahead of advanced of people that just sit back and criticize, but they're not willing to have a go themselves. And that's the biggest thing that I've taken away. And I sort of live by now. I go, well, you know what? People that have a go at me or make fun of me or whatever, I go, well, I'm out having a go. What are you doing? Like, yeah, okay, you can be a keyboard warrior. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. But what are you doing? What makes you so special? What are you doing in your life that is helping others? Or, like, look, if anything, I'm bringing veteran stories to life. I'm also talking to leading historians from right around the world about Australia's involvement in military history. And we're talking about the men and women who have gone before us, and that we're doing them a service by remembering them. That's what it's all about. It's about remembrance. It's about remembering the service and sacrifice of the men and women that have gone before us. And for me, if anyone laughs at me or says, oh, and I get it all the time, Vera, because I get it that people say, but hang on, how can you talk about history? You're not a military historian. Well, I'm in the processes of becoming a military historian. So, and look, I believe, and I'm a big believer in this, that if you're passionate about a certain topic, you're already 50% there to what you need to achieve. You've just got to do the 50% hard work to make it achievable and chase that dream. And I look at people now, and I often say that. I go, well, I'm already a success because I had the guts to go out and go for it. And really, when there was a lot of naysayers saying that I couldn't do it, and believe you me, my old work where I worked, they were the biggest naysayers in the world. They made fun of me and said, "Oh, you think you're going to make it as a podcaster? You think you are kidding yourself?" And the numbers don't lie, Vera. I am now, in 12 months, I've nearly hit 10,000 downloads in 12 months.
Fantastic.
Like that for me is huge. And I'm forever grateful. I had my best month ever last month, and I'm forever grateful for the people that listen to the podcast. And look, we had some fantastic guests on. We had, as you said at the start, we had World War II veteran David Triss, 95 years old, and I got to sit down with him. That, to me, has been the highlight of the whole podcast. Sitting down, I set out, my goal when I started the podcast was to interview a World War II veteran. I've now achieved that, and now I go, okay, my next goal is this, and I'm not going to give it away, but I've set my next goal, and I'm going to achieve that this year. And it's in the military space, it is huge. Like, for me to speak to the person that I'm going to speak to, it's huge. And I set that intention, I put it out there, I set the goal, and I'm going to achieve that goal. So for me, that is, like I said, I go back to goal setting. Like I said at the start of the podcast, for any kids out there who listen to this, set goals. Goal setting is the most important thing that you can do in your life. It sets your life up. If you want a prosperous life, be a goal setter, be a dreamer, and don't associate yourself with the naysayers and the people that say you can't do something, because I guarantee you they will drag you down. They will drag you down into negativity. If you want to go and be with the dreamers, the goal setters, the chasers, the people that want more out of life, go and be with them, because I guarantee you it sets you to a platform that just absolutely frees you up to live a free and happy life. And honestly, I wish I had woken up maybe 10 years ago. I wish I had been on this where I am now, where I was back then, because I now am awake. I am now awake to a whole brighter, happier life. And I've just got people like Bob Proctor, Napoleon Hill, my nan, Margaret, my friend Margaret, she's my mentor as well, my academic advisor on my podcast. My parents now are my number one. They would be my number one. But all my other mentors, I thank them every day. I thank them for the new person I am, and I'm so grateful. I'm grateful. And look, Vera, people, as I say, like, people think I am crazy. I've gone crazy, but I'm just awake. I've just woken up to how good life can be if you let it. So, and you're the same. You're the same. I know you're the same.
Yeah.
We've spoken, and you're the same.
There is so much passion in your voice. There is so much life energy that you're exuding right now. I absolutely love it, and I see it, and I feel it, and I thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question for you.
Yes.
Where you say that you wish you had known all of these things 10 years ago, I get it. I totally get it. My question is, would you be the person you are today without that adversity? Had you known about these things 10 years ago, had you lived a different life, would you be who you are today without that?
No. No, I wouldn't. No, I think that's a really good question. And no, I wouldn't be the person I am if I hadn't gone through all the experiences that I've got. And like, in a short life, some people might say you're only 29, but I've gone through a hell of a lot in 29 years of life. I really have. And look, I'm not saying I'm special, but I've also gone through, and I remembered that I got diagnosed at 27 with binocular vision. So what binocular vision is a part of my brain never developed as a child. So I only see half a picture. I don't see a full picture. And so theoretically, as the specialist told me, I shouldn't be able to read, I shouldn't be able to write, I shouldn't be able to drive. I do all those things. So for me, I've had so many hurdles, not any dissimilar to anybody else who has had hurdles. I've had hurdles that I've had to overcome that in 29 years, most people would probably give up and go, actually, you know what? I give up. Why go and try? Like, I'm not like that. And I come back to my nana. I come back to my mum. I come back to my dad. I come back to my family, my brother. I'm at a point where, yeah, I wouldn't be awake now if I hadn't had to overcome all these obstacles. And for me, it's been like, I asked the specialist when I was diagnosed with binocular vision, well, can anything be done? And he said no. He said, you're too old now. He said, if we had picked up on this when you were 4, we could have worked on it from when you were 4 to 12. That was the critical age that I needed to be where they could be developing that part of my brain. And unfortunately, my mum, when I told her, she got upset because I was told that I always had to wear glasses, and I was cross-eyed, and I had the operations, but they never picked up on what was going on with what was happening. And I was always told the reason I struggled, they thought it was just because I struggled with reading because I couldn't read. I had to wear glasses, and it wasn't the case. That the part of my brain that was missing that had to develop it never developed. So that's why for me reading has been so hard, and that's why now for a long time, Vera, I shied away from it. I didn't want to read because I wasn't good at it. And look, I'm never going to be a fantastic reader. I say that, and I know that, and that's the positive me talking. I know I'm not going to be, but I know that if I work on it every day, I will get bit by bit. I will get a little bit better, but it's making me feel like finishing 2 books. That's huge for me. That's huge, absolutely huge. Over Christmas, that was huge. Now I enjoy going through a book and reading a book now, and I go, okay. When I start a book, I go, okay. My goal is to finish this book. That's a goal that I've set myself. And you're right. I think if I hadn't have been 10 years ago, if I hadn't had to overcome adversity like I have, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I really feel that in this space, like of being like personal development and becoming a personal development coach, and I eventually, as I said to you, Vera, I eventually want to become a life coach. I want to help people. I really do. I really want to help and show people that, hey, you can have a better life if you want it, if you desire it, you can have it. And for me, I feel that there's some life coaches out there that they don't have a story, so they can't be empathetic with people because they haven't lived through it. For them, it's just a paycheck. It's just, oh, good, I can make a lot of money. I actually care about the person. I actually want to help the person, and I've got a story that I can tell because I've had to overcome adversity my whole life. I've had to overcome it, and that for me is where I think I will connect with people a lot better than people who haven't gone through struggles and just do it for a job. I think that's the big difference.
Yeah, you do care, and you care on that different level. And if we can circle back to Vivian's episode that you chose to talk about, the same sort of thing, she'd been in that dark place. She'd left her home country. She's never gone back to her home country. She has connected to people I know personally from the types of life that she has gone after here in Australia. She has said, you know what, this is what I want, let's go at it. And through that, through allowing herself to do that, to giving herself permission to say, this is my purpose, these are the goals that I'm going to set for myself. I'm not going to pursue goals that other people have set for me. I'm going to pursue the ones that I want, the ones that I've set. I want to achieve the goals that I want to achieve. She has influenced so many people, and it fascinates me that from this little girl that barely spoke to the point where she said at one point, the teacher said that, oh no, Vivian can't scream, or Vivian can't, make that noise. And Vivian's thinking Vivian can make that noise. She just hasn't. And so, discovering herself and what she wanted gave herself that voice. She does share her story like you share your story. She's, it's in the sharing that the caring is there. It's in the sharing where the connection is invited for people who would like to reciprocate that connection, who would like to pick up on that frequency and say, hey, I'm down here now, but I want to be up here with you. Can I join you? And giving people permission by sharing our stories, that's what we're doing. We're saying, hey, I have been down here too. And I might be up here at the moment, but there's still going to be days where I'm down there because I'm human. These things happen. And so it's about taking all of the skills that we learn through these life experiences and applying the techniques and the management and the ways that we work on ourselves that we know can help ourselves get back up to where we want to be. And the more people that we have in support for that, the more that we can help even more people.
Absolutely. And I think too, Vera, what I've taken away, if you had said to me 2 years ago that I'd be a podcast host of my own podcast, True Blue History, I would have said, no way, no way, not at all, no, not a chance. And it's funny because I can laugh about it because I look back to where I was 2 years ago to where I am now, and now I only see myself now as a podcast host, and it's funny that how things have changed in that short time, and now if people say to me, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I go, well, this is where I see myself. I see myself still podcasting, still being working on my personal development, and I see myself as a life coach, helping people and coaching people and saying, hey, look, you're right. When you said it, Vera, you're right. Hey, if people come and say, hey, I'm down here, but I want to get to here, and they go, how do I do it? I'll say, well, let me show you. Let me show you. And look, my goal in life is, and I said it from a young age, and I'm not afraid to say it. I said that I will be a millionaire. I said it from when I was 10 years old. I said that I would be a millionaire. But the reasons I say I want to be a millionaire, and people ask me all the time, why do you want to be a millionaire? And I said, plain and simple, I want to show people how to get financial freedom, and I want to show them how that when rich people donate to charities, or they're sort of saying that they agree that people who are less fortunate than they are, they're sort of putting a blanket on them, and I don't want to do that. I want to show people who are struggling, go, well, hey, look, I was down in the dumps too. I was down here, but let me show you what I did to become to have financial freedom, but also to have an absolutely prosperity of life, have a joyful life, and let me show you what I did. So that in a sense, I feel that so money. If you are a generous person, money's only going to amplify. If you've got more money, you can amplify what you already are. If you are a terrible person, it's only going to amplify you and make you worse. If you're a giving person, which I am, and you are, and others are, it's only going to amplify what you can do, because to have financial freedom, you can achieve so much with money. You can do things that you can't do when you don't have money. So that's the reason why, that is my main reason why. And people are shocked, Vera, when I say that. They are shocked. They are shocked. They are shocked because they think it's all about me. No, it's not. The first goal is to help my family. Then it's to help others. Then it's to help myself. That's what and people are blown away by that. They say, "What? Shouldn't it be you help yourself first?" No, it's help my family first, help others, then myself. That is how I've said it, and that is how I've put it out to the universe. That is how I will help for the rest of my life. That is what I will. That's the message that I have, and that is what I will give for the rest of my life.
Very interesting. Financial freedom, soul freedom. What money does is it gives you options, as you said. When you haven't had money, there are some things that become very difficult because you need those financial resources to be able to be generous, to be able to give, and you don't always have that when there's no money around. And so I thank you for bringing that up. I think it's a very important topic, and one that a lot of people perhaps can think a little differently about, in that if we look at money as a resource rather than the be-all or end-all goal in itself, that can change the way that we consider why we're pursuing money. Because if the goal is simply money itself, like you said, it can amplify the good but also the bad. It can amplify the things that are not going to benefit other people or even yourself. How many people have you heard about winning Tats Lotto and then drinking themselves into oblivion, or gambling themselves into oblivion? So it's less about the money itself and more about what we do with it. And I think that the pursuit of wanting to be rich, to wanting to have $1 million, I know that for me, if I can just share a little bit, I mean, you said if people had asked you 2 years ago, you would be a podcaster, or if you would be a podcaster, it's like, no way, Podcasting was not on my radar until August last year. I launched my podcast in September last year. I had no plan on doing a podcast, and it never even come into my mind until August. I mean, I was listening and consuming podcasts all the time, and something came across my awareness. And for the first time in my life, I thought, well, I could be doing a podcast. I had started my movement. It made sense to me at that moment in time to say, I could do a podcast. This is a way that I can get my message out there and help so many more people that I can't physically get to. And we were in the middle of COVID. For me, I was in the middle of my 9-month lockdown. I'm stuck inside the house. And so for me, it was like, well, I'm never going to be able to influence people on stages if I'm stuck at home. I have no idea how long this thing's going to go for. So why not look outside the box? Why not say, hey, why wouldn't I start a podcast? And so a little bit like you, I didn't look at the reasons that I didn't know what to do and I couldn't start a podcast. I just said, let's do it. And I went and I sourced out some people to help me learn what to do, get it set up, and I launched it. It's been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. One of, I have many, but it's been one of the best decisions because I'm now, like you, connecting to amazing people. I'm able to give of myself so many things that people need and want, so much inspiration, so much connection. People feel empowered after listening to these episodes. And in the sharing of stories, again, as somebody who has lived through a lot in my life, I understand the power of my story. And I often say to people, do you understand the power of yours? And I think that you do understand the power of yours, Adam, and I thank you. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I would like to ask you the question that you ask a lot of your guests. Why did you choose my podcast? This is the first podcast interview you've ever done. Why did you choose me?
I just resonated with you, Vera, from when we reached out in our group in KBB Down Under, and it just, for me, I just, when I put up my personal story, you reached out to me, and I felt that it was, I just had to talk to you, and speaking to you, and just talking and getting to know you, and following your podcast, and listening to episodes. I just felt, no, I've really got to talk to Vera. I really do. I need to. I guess I feel that I had a message as well to share with people, and I felt that your show really gave me that platform to share that message, and I feel that that's why I chose to come on your podcast, because I had a message to share, and I had a story to tell, and everyone's got a story. Every single person has a story to tell, whether it's good, whether it's bad. You've got to look at both. The world is not black and white; it is coloured, and you've got to see past what people do, and like you said, it's your actions, it's your words, it's your story. Telling your story is, someone might just listen to my story and go, hey, that's me. Mm-hmm. Look at where he is. Look at what he's achieved. And that is the message, that if someone listens to this and says, hey, actually, you know what? He's inspirational, or, it makes me want to change my life, makes me want to turn my life around. That's the message. I think, Vera, that is why I chose to come on your podcast.
Well, I thank you for choosing to come on my podcast, and I hope that it's been
thank you
a good experience for you. I know I asked some tough questions in there, and I appreciate and value that you are willing to sit with that space and answer them for us.
Absolutely. No, I feel I've grown that much, Vera, that I am now at a point where I'm an open book, and I'm ready to tell my story, and I'm not ashamed of what I have done in my past. It's made me who I am today, and it's only making me a better person going into the future. So I'm absolutely over the moon to come on and tell my story to you and your listeners. Absolutely. And and like you said, my podcast has been my saving grace. It has turned into my labor of love. I just absolutely love True Blue history. It is just, as I said, I'm honored and privileged to, like you, similar stories, but not in, like, it's different in life. It's an experience that these veterans have gone through, that I get to share their message and their experiences. So I'm lucky as well, and I'm forever grateful that I just jumped straight in. I, like you, just went, you know what, go for it. And it actually came off someone that I listened to their podcast, and it was a mate of mine, and I just wanted to get on his podcast, and then he never put me on his show. So I went, well, bugger you. If you're not gonna put me on your show,
I will.
I'm gonna start my own show.
Yeah,
so that was it. That was what it was. And and it's funny that the team I've got behind me now, they actually said, well, we're grateful that he didn't put you on, because it's now you've launched your own podcast, and it's going really well. And it is. And I am forever grateful, and I'm grateful that I've met you, and I know now that the message is that if anyone is out there and they are struggling, life does get better. I'm a living example of that. I've gone through hell, and I've overcome adversity to now live a happy and prosperous life. I'm living a happy life, and that is the message. That be a goal setter for one. If anything, you take anything away, be a goal setter for one. Be a dreamer. It's nothing to be a dreamer, and hard work, and you can achieve anything. You can achieve anything you anything you set out to do in life, you can achieve it.
Thank you so much. How can people get in contact with you if they would like to, Adam?
So they can contact me via our website, so truebluehistory.com. They can follow the podcast through Apple Podcasts, so True Blue History, Spotify, and YouTube. The YouTube channel is True Blue History, and also on Stitcher, or Twitter as well, Twitter and Instagram, True Blue History, or you can get in direct contact with us via our email address, which is truebluehistory@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to share something.
Yep.
Just then when you were talking about you jumped right in and you've taken action, and we as podcasters have both done the same thing. I want to thank you for not jumping right over that cliff and taking the action in that moment when you so very nearly could have. I also want to thank you for taking instant action when you heard your nan's voice telling you, you're worthy, you need to stay here, you're going to help so many people.
Thank you. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much, Vera. It really does. I really appreciate that, and it's through people like yourself and others who have I don't get me wrong. I've still got my inspirational people that I look to, and you're one of them as well. And it's I'm lucky, and I look at it and thank you. Like I'm just an ordinary everyday Australian that goes about volunteering for his community down at the fire shed, and just podcasting and just getting a message out to people. I thank you very much. I thank you for that. I really do appreciate those words. It really means a lot to me.
They came from my heart. I see you, I hear you, and I do thank you.
Thank you. Means a lot. It really does, Vera. I'm really grateful to have people like you in my life. So thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Why Me with Vera-Lee podcast series and honouring today's guest and their story. Here is a short snippet from our next guest, an episode to be released.
So I look at the past and I go, well, some days I feel like I've got a pretty shitty past, you know? I've had some really crappy things happen, and then I go, well, what does the future hold? Oh God, it could come back. So, the two things you're looking at can be really quite negative in some, and provide you with a sense of anxiety. Whereas the present moment is all you've got, really, so it's all about, for me, coming back to where am I now? What am I doing now? What am I working towards? Don't look outside the box. Don't look at what everyone else is doing, because everyone is at a very different trajectory to where I am. I'm a recovering cancer patient. I'm not going to be able to run 20 miles tomorrow, you know what I mean? And I say it to my kids all the time. It's funny. I was just saying to my sister, I give this advice to my kids, and as I'm giving it, I'm thinking, oh, I should listen to that.
I do that.
I know. And this morning my 12-year-old's off to camp, and I said to her, just stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. You don't need to worry about what everyone else is doing. And I'm thinking, yeah, Katrina, that's a good one. Stay in your lane, mate. Just, stay focused. And I'm saying all you can be is Bethany Houghton. That's all you can be, and all I can be is Katrina Houghton. And if people don't like it, this is all you've got, mate. You know what I mean? And you have to learn about who you are. And all of those things resonate with all of us, and it does come back to living in that present moment, understanding who you are as a person. And she was with me the day I was diagnosed. We were actually planning to go out for lunch. So we were waiting in the waiting room, and because I thought it was just an infection in my boob, we were waiting for the final results so we could bugger off and go to lunch in Brizzy, And then they told me, and I said, I think I better get Mum in here. So Mum, they said she's got cancer, and Mum obviously, devastated, and I think she even said to me the other day, oh, please no more bad news. I don't think I can take it, and yes, it was the why me, but it was also this, what the hell is happening right now? Are they bullshitting me? Like, is someone having a laugh? And I almost said to her, like, are you taking the piss? Like, are you having a laugh here? Because this can't, have you got the right file? It was just so surreal. And of course, Mum, oh my God, you could die. What am I going to do if you die? I brought you into this world. You're mine. You know, you're a part of me. You can't go before me. So, you know, all of these things are racing through your head, and you can't listen, you can't hear. I'm terrified of needles. So suddenly I was taken into this room and had all these biopsies and fine needling and things like this to start to really investigate how far the cancer had gone. I mean, for me, I'm thinking I'm dead. I'm dying. This is it. I'm dying. And, you know, you start thinking about, well, what are the kids going to do? What am I going to do with the kids? How are they going to survive? Who's going to pay for them? You know, I am more of the being sort of my background in economics and being a bit of a researcher myself, I really relied on Google, and that is just like super bad. Do not Google your diagnosis. It's just really opens up a big can of worms. And my oncologist kept saying to me, stop Googling. But I just bloody couldn't help myself, you know, because it's 2:00 in the morning, I can't sleep, I've got cancer and my hair's falling out and I'm thinking I'm dying, you know. I'm looking up, you know, what is the likelihood of this? What is the, crazy stuff. And so I decided that I wanted to create a booklet that provided information to try and get people out of that headspace. And I wanted to create a physical copy simply because with chemo, I found it really difficult to read on my phone or on a computer. My eyes were so watery, and my ability to concentrate and the dizziness, that sort of thing. So I wanted to create a physical guide that sort of, I guess, advice on where you could find a wig or what type of wig, you know, or where you could find headscarves and, mastectomy bras and things like that, you know, so that, because ultimately there's that fear of like, in 2 weeks, I've just found out I got cancer. Now in 2 weeks, my hair's going to fall out. Then I'm going to look really quite hideous for a period of time. Then, you know, I'm going to have to get my boobs cut off, and so I'm going to have no boobs, and then and then is my hair going to come back, and what's it going to come back like? So you know, there's this real vanity that comes with getting cancer as well, you know. And I wanted to alleviate some of that fear for people to be able to say, well, actually, there are some nice places to get bras. There are some nice places in your local area where you can get and access wigs or headscarves or things like that. Lots of patient stories as well. So, you know, and I, for good reason, placed a lot of younger women in those stories simply because it just showed that, you know, you're not the only one, because you do feel a bit almost lonely, you know, so where you could get different services. So, you know, your radiation services and things like that. So that sort of was the thought process, really was about connecting with patients and providing some comfort. So we did Queensland and Sydney this year, which has been great, and work with the breast care nurses to make sure they get them to the patients. And yeah, so it's been really fun, and it's been great connecting with really great surgeons.
I'd like to thank Be the Frisbee for giving their 5-star rating and review titled The Suspense. Love listening to this through the speaker system. Such emotion and powerful messages. Can't wait to hear more. I'd like to personally thank you for leaving your feedback in the form of a rating and review, so that other people who come across this podcast have the opportunity to tune in and gain value that you yourself have gained from these stories, from these guests, and from the WhyMe movement that is behind the WhyMe podcast, to inspire, connect, and empower you. And I encourage each of you to go and rate and review on the podcast platform where you listen to the WhyMe with Vera-Lee podcast, as a nice way to show your support for our show.
Do you know someone who might relate to the topics discussed in today's episode? If you do, I would love for you to please share this with them by hitting the share link and telling this person you're thinking of them today in your message. It is one easy way you can continue to share the love, the connection, and be positively bringing impact into the world. And if you personally gain benefit from this conversation, I'd love to hear through a rating and review, comments on my social media posts at Vera-Lee Original, or on the new website WhyMeMovement.com, where you can find the book list as recommended by my guests, links to the episode snippets on YouTube, and some other really cool bonuses that are available to you. I'd love for you to check out the website and to link in with the WhyMe community.